tycker jag på sådana här finesser till exempel som hawaiiansk näsång. Kommer ni ihåg den här?
Oh! Hello YouTubers. Oh.
Ja, den hittade han på först, han hade en massa andra grejer också.
Yeah, I'm going to shut that off for now. Well, hello YouTubers. It's been a week ago, a week filled with lots of coughs, sneezes and stuff like that. I've had a bad cold. Well, fairly bad anyway, but I'm back at work anyway, so that's good. What's happening? Well, tomorrow I'm going to a record fair in central Stockholm. I hope I'll find something interesting there, although not really sure what I'm looking for at the moment. Today, well, late last night or in the evening, I got the quite sad news that the Swedish comedian and actor and television personality Lars-Erik Brännström, or Brasse as he was called, passed away, 69 years old, and that has caused a lot of sorrow in Sweden, because he was first of all a member of the comedy duo Magnus and Brasse, who made both stage shows for grown-ups and a very popular television series for kids called Fem myror och fyra elefanter. And the whole idea of that show was to help children learn the alphabet, and which would help them when they said them were going to learn to read. And there's been several generations of children, including myself, who have learned the alphabet thanks to that show, because it's been shown as reruns for years and years and years. Even today's students have seen the show, and they were making reference about it. Of course, he was, as some journalist wrote, he was like the children's favorite, because he was the most childlike in the comedy sketches for children that they made, and his partner Magnus Härenstam was more like the adult with the sensible one. The record I was playing now in the background is this. It's called Varning för barn, and it was released on Metronome in 1976, and it was recorded on stage in Gothenburg. And from what I've heard, this has been the best selling record of the Metronome label of all time, and that's quite interesting, because it is a comedy album, but it shows that how popular they were. This was Brasse Brännström. There's been more talk in the press the last couple of years about his comedy partner Magnus Härenstam, and him suffering from serious illnesses and trying to pull through that, but now it is Brasse who has left us, and was very sad. Right, that wasn't what I was going to talk about in this video. I was going to talk about me finding a big pile of 10-inch LPs, most of them with jazz, and I like this format. It was the childhood of a vinyl record, and in this pile I have a very early child that I'm going to show you later. Sorry about the coughing. I don't have a cough button because I'm not a radio station, and I have a bit of a sore throat. But I'm going to digress right from the start by showing you another record that I found at the same time, and it's this early LP with Bunk Johnson, The Last Testament of a Great New Orleans Jazzman. It's a Columbia first press from 1952, so it's very early, and it's a 12-inch. That's why it's digressing from the 10-inch format theme here, but I found it at the same time. What's so special about this? Well, or what's so special about Bunk Johnson? Well, he was one of these really early jazz musicians that jazz archaeologists, if you can call them that, they were very fascinated by the life and the music of Bunk Johnson, because Bunk never recorded anything in the early days. It may have been before the recording technology, but they managed to, well, not dig him up, but they managed to find him in the, well, maybe 1940s, and they gave him a new trumpet and convinced him that he should start playing. I don't think he had been playing that much for many years, and he made a comeback and played the jazz. And the whole idea was that this is how jazz sounded in the very early beginning. Of course, we don't know that, because it's just trying to recreate what once was there. And but Bunk Johnson, many jazz experts have later said, well, Bunk Johnson was more interesting from a historical point of view than musical point of view. But anyway, a very early jazz musician on a very early LP on Columbia. Many of these albums are quite difficult to date, although you can find a lot of information on the Both Sides Now website. But I also remembered when I found these albums that I had this old Goldmine jazz album price guide from the year 2000. Not really interested in values and so on, but at least you get the year of the release of many of these records that I found. So I've had great help from this. So, shall we start? I think so. First we're going to have a look at those who aren't really jazz, but and we have this Coming Round the Mountain by Dorothy Shea, the Park Avenue Hillbilly. It's a Columbia 10-inch album well, it's from 1950, and it has, let's see, it has a red label with gold printing, so very early. And Dorothy Shea was, well, some sort of early country and western singer, country and western pop music singer, or pop music with a hillbilly taste, if you can call it that. Some quite interesting songs, orchestra under the direction of Mitchell Ayers. It's not fantastically interesting, but quite fun. The great singer Mildred Bailey. We have here a Mildred Bailey Serenade, Columbia, and this is from 1950 as well. Many of these are Americans, but we have some British issues too. This is a British issue, Josephine Baker on Columbia, the songs Old and New. It has the series number 33 CS2, so must be a very early record in that series at least. I thought that they were going to be old 78 RPM recordings here, but it seems to be recordings from the time, that's to say the early 50s. Then, alright, I talked about the really early LP, and I have to say, you can't really find anything earlier than this. It's a Victor Borge program on Columbia. It has the number CL6013. Yeah, and it is the CL60 or 6000 series was the first commercial LP series or 33 RPM series that Columbia issued back in 1948. So, my friends, this is an LP from 1948, and I got this information from the great Both Sides Now website. I thought that the first LPs were issued in 1949, but they weren't. So, really interesting. Dark red label with golden printing, and I checked the artists that were issued on the first pile of releases back in 1948. Victor Borge was the only that you could call a bit of a comedian, so that should mean that this is probably the first comedy album ever issued. And I think that's pretty cool. And I was really, really surprised. I thought it was maybe from 1950 or 51 when I found it, but not from 1948. So, there you go. Then we have with stage personality Beatrice Lilly, 30 minutes with Beatrice Lilly. I didn't know that much about her, but I've read up a bit about her on well, internet. So, but the thing I find more interesting here is the actual record label, Liberty, because I can't really be able to find that information on when this might have been issued. Sorry. And I know that Liberty issued records back in the 50s, but they had different labels. And when I went to a website searching information about the Liberty label, I haven't found anything about these 10 inches. So I'm not sure if it's the same actual record company. Probably is, but I don't know. Right. Then, okay, themes from Italian films. Robert Ashley and his orchestra. We got Anna from Anna and others, and of course one reason why I thought that this was a nice record to have was because, first of all, great songs from Italian movies, and also very nice sleeve, and this was issued on MGM, and it's a British issue. Now over to a record that I had no idea that it existed. It's a bit of a chronicle record, a news chronicle, and this is called Karusell's Månadskrönika, and with the speaker Åke Falk and Marianne Boman and others. This is from 1954. One of the sides, they talk about what happened in Sweden in January 1954, and on the other side, February 1954. And the Carousel label was started in 1952 or 53, I'm not really sure, by jazz man Simon Brem. I had no idea that they released vinyl albums about this, and I don't know how many were issued. I know that 2 were issued because I saw 2 at once, but I only managed to get hold of this one. I'm more happy that I got this one because we have on the B-side February 1954. That's the same month my mother was born, so that's interesting in that sense. Right, alright, that was the non-jazz albums, and I've already been talking for 30 minutes. Alright, let's speed it up. I was happy to find a whole nice pile of records on the X label, and if you're not familiar with that, it was some sort of budget label used to reissue old 78 RPM recordings with jazz, and the label was run by, it was a subsidiary label to RCA Victor, and it was quite short-lived. I think they only existed maybe 1 or 2 years. All these X label issues that I was happy to find were issued in 1954. So, well, let's have a look through them then. This is Rex Stewart and his orchestra, and these are recordings from the Victor Bluebird label. And I didn't have any of these X issues before, so I was very happy to find them, and they are all in, well, from VG Plus to excellent condition, so that's great. Benny Moten's Kansas City Jazz Volume 1, Eddie Condon's Hot Shots, with mostly recordings, of course, from the Victor label here. And this, I'm very happy to find this Johnny Dodds Washboard Band, with recordings from the 1928-1929. All right, the original Dixon Jazz Band, historical records of the first of the jazz bands, by the first of the jazz bands, Volume 1. And these recordings were, of course, made in the late teens and early 1920s, but and they have been reissued many times since then. But this ought to be one of the first vinyl issues of these recordings. And we have, well, Livery Stable Blues, or Dixie Jazz Band, One Step, and Tiger Rag, and stuff like that. Right. Backgrounds of Jazz, the Jug Bands, Volume 1. We got the Dixieland Jug Blowers and the Memphis Jug Bands. And I have a deep affection for the jug bands there, and also the jug band comeback of the 1960s, with groups exploring the old past of the jazz and blues music, and of course finding the original 78 RPMs that these bands made in the 1920s. It's almost impossible here. So I'm very happy for these reissues, and this is a very early reissue. Fletcher Henderson and his Connie's Inn Orchestra, featuring Coleman Hawkins and Rex Stewart. These are recordings from the late 20s, early 30s, also on the X label. I didn't show what the X label looks like if you're interested. All of them were looks like this. We have white with the red X. Very simple. I have to say, on the back of all the sleeves, lots of interesting reading, but you learn a lot about these early issues. Yeah, and okay, I can show you the other one. The early ones had this yellow label with a black X. So, for those of you who are label buffs, I know I am one of them. Okay, which was the last one I showed? Yeah, Fletcher Henderson. Washboard Rhythm Kings, Volume 1. Washboard Jazz at its wildest. And these are recordings from 1931, 1932 in Camden, New Jersey. Just like the jug bands, I like the washboard bands too. And Benny Moten's Kansas City Jazz Volume 3. So I don't have Volume 2. Created a gap in my collection now because I had Volume 1 and Volume 3. Alright. Okay, the last ones then. We have here on Brunswick, Louis Armstrong. Louis Armstrong's Jazz Classics. This ought to be one of the earliest reissues of old Louis Armstrong recordings. This was issued back in 1950. Then we have some British issues on the London label here. We got Jimmy Blythe's State Street Ramblers with recordings from the 1920s. I love Clarence Williams, so I got Clarence Williams and his orchestra. Red Nichols and Miff Mole, love them too, from the 1920s here. New York Jazz of the Roaring Twenties. I got a great affection for 1920s culture, 1920s music, everything like that. As many of you already know. Got Johnny Dodds, lovely sleeve there, really great. With Tiny Parham and Blythe's Washburn Ragamuffins, just that kind of name. So it's called Johnny Dodds Volume 2, also on London. And let's see, we have this one, Backroom Special, Clarence Williams, Washboard Band and Blue 5 and Novelty 4. This is a record I already had, but this is a better copy, so that's better. That's good. It's a British issue on Columbia. We have another British issue, King Oliver in Harlem, New York period 1929 to 1930. It's on His Master's Voice. And then finally, Count Basie and his orchestra, Rock the Blues on Epic from 1955. And talking about nice covers, this is... I wouldn't mind being on that show or at that party when they have as much fun as here. I was surprised. I didn't know that Epic issued records as early as 1955. And for those of you who likes labels, is this yellow one. Right. Okay, I've been speaking for 21 minutes now. Right. That's it for now. I hope you all have a great weekend. Tomorrow I'm going record digging in central Stockholm at Eriksdalshallen, if everything turns out well. And who knows what I might find, if I may find anything. But it's also it's fun to get out and dig for records. Even though if those record fairs, the sellers usually know what to charge for the records, so you don't really make any big bargains, but you might find something really rare and interesting. I hope to do that anyway, and all the best to you. Goodbye, and yeah, goodbye.